They called me the bitter ex-wife at my own divorce party. While my husband paraded his blonde model around like a trophy, I smiled and raised my glass. They had no idea I'd just become the majority shareholder of his billion-dollar empire. Sometimes the best revenge is served with champagne and signed documents. If you love stories where karma hits harder than heartbreak, smash that like button right now. Trust me, you'll want to share this one with everyone who's ever been underestimated. Now let me tell you how I went from discarded wife to corporate queen in one unforgettable night. My name is Valencia Brooks, and this is the story of how I lost everything and gained so much more. I met Trevor Whitmore when we were both hungry, not for food, but for success. It was Harvard Business School, and we were two scholarship kids in a sea of trust fund babies. He had the vision, the charisma, the big ideas that could light up a room. I had the legal mind, the strategy, the ability to turn dreams into protected, profitable reality. We were magnetic together. We studied until 3 in the morning, debated tech innovation over coffee that tasted like burnt ambition, and somewhere between corporate law finals and his thesis on disruptive technology, we fell in love. We got married the summer after graduation, in a small ceremony that felt like the beginning of everything. No fancy venue, just us, and a handful of friends who believed in what we were building. Because we weren't just building a marriage, we were building an empire. Tech Vista Solutions started in a garage with maxed-out credit cards and a dream that seemed impossible. Trevor was the face, the visionary CEO, who pitched to investors with the kind of confidence that made people open their wallets. But I was the architect behind the scenes, the woman who structured every deal, protected every patent, negotiated every contract that turned his ideas into intellectual property worth billions. 15 years, that's how long we built together. 15 years of late nights, of celebrating funding rounds, of seeing our company go from garage startup to NASDAQ darling. We made it to the Forbes Power Couples list 3 times. We had the penthouse in Manhattan, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. We threw charity galas, where people paid $50,000 a plate just to be in our orbit. From the outside, we were untouchable. From the inside, I thought we were unbreakable. I was wrong. It started small, the way betrayal always does. Trevor's late nights became later. His business trips stretched longer. He'd come home smelling like perfume I didn't wear, with lipstick stains on collars he swore came from aggressive investors kissing his cheek. I'm a lawyer. I'm trained to see evidence, to trust facts over feelings. But love makes you ignore what you know is true. Love makes you stupid. Then I found the hotel receipts, not from business conferences in Silicon Valley or investor meetings in Boston. From the Four Seasons in Paris, the Ritz in Maldives, luxury chalets in Aspen. All during weeks when Trevor told me he was working. All charged to his personal card, not the company expense account. My hand shook as I sat in our home office, surrounded by the contracts I'd written, the deals I'd structured, the empire we'd built together, holding evidence that my husband was building a completely different life without me. I hired a private investigator, even though everything in me screamed that I shouldn't need to spy on my own husband. The photos arrived in a manila envelope 3 weeks later. Trevor and a woman, young and blonde and beautiful, holding hands on the Champs-Élysées, kissing on a beach with water so blue it looked fake, his arm around her waist at a mountain resort, both of them laughing like they didn't have a care in the world, like I didn't exist. Her name was Sienna Laurent, 26 years old, Russian-French model with 2 million Instagram followers, and a face that sold everything from designer handbags to luxury vodka. She was everything I wasn't. Younger, softer, the kind of woman who posted selfies with captions about manifesting abundance and positive vibes, whose biggest achievement was walking runways in Milan. The man I'd built an empire with was building a new life, with someone who'd never built anything at all. I confronted him in that same home office where I'd found the receipts. I'll never forget the way he looked at me, not with guilt or shame, but with relief. Like he was glad he didn't have to hide anymore. He sat in the leather chair we'd picked out together and said the words that shattered 15 years into broken glass. I need someone who makes me feel alive, Valencia. You're too focused on work, too intense, too much, too much. I was too much. The woman who'd sacrificed her own legal career to build his company. The woman who'd worked 18-hour days to protect his intellectual property. The woman who'd negotiated billion-dollar deals while he took credit in front of cameras. I was too much. Sienna doesn't challenge me, he said. And I watched him smile like he was describing paradise. She admires me. She makes me feel like a man, not a business partner. There's a difference, Valencia. You wouldn't understand. He wanted a decoration, not a partner. He wanted someone who would look pretty on his arm and tell him he was brilliant without questioning his decisions or pushing him to be better. He wanted someone who would shrink so he could feel bigger. And I realized in that moment that I'd been loving a man who'd been waiting for the right time to replace me. Trevor asked for a divorce that night. He promised a fair settlement, whatever that meant, coming from a man who'd just admitted he'd been cheating on me across 3 continents. Within 2 weeks, he announced his relationship with Sienna on Instagram, posting sunset photos with captions about finding true love and new beginnings. The media ate it up like starving wolves. Tech billionaire trades power wife for supermodel. Trevor Whitmore chooses beauty over brains. The think pieces wrote themselves, and the comment sections became cesspools of strangers discussing my inadequacies. No wonder he left. She probably emasculated him. Black women are too aggressive. Maybe if she'd spent less time in boardrooms and more time in the gym. The trolls were relentless, and some of them weren't even anonymous. People I'd considered friends suddenly had opinions about my marriage, my appearance, my worth as a woman. Trevor's wealth and influence made people choose sides, and most of them chose him. I became the villain in my own love story. The bitter ex-wife who couldn't keep her man happy. But while everyone was busy making me the punchline, I was doing what I do best. I was building a case. I wasn't just crying into expensive wine and eating ice cream at midnight. Though I did plenty of that too. I was investigating. I was pulling financial records and board meeting minutes and shareholder agreements. I was calling in favors from forensic accountants who owed me from deals I'd structured years ago. And what I found made my heartbreak turn into something much more powerful. Rage. Strategic, calculated rage. Trevor had been cooking the books. He'd been hiding assets, moving money into offshore accounts, mortgaging company property to fund his lavish lifestyle with Sienna. Those trips to Paris, paid for with company funds, disguised as business development. Sienna's diamond jewelry, expensed as corporate gifts. He'd been systematically looting the company we built together, preparing to divorce me and leave me with as little as legally possible. His lawyers were already drafting settlement offers that would give me a tiny fraction of what I'd earned. His mistake was underestimating the woman who'd structured every single business deal that made him rich. Then Trevor did something so audacious, so monumentally arrogant, that I almost had to admire it. He announced he was throwing a divorce celebration party, not a quiet dinner with close friends, a full-scale event at Cipriani, the restaurant where we'd celebrated every major Tech Vista milestone. He invited everyone, board members, investors, business partners, society reporters, friends who'd watched us build our empire from nothing. The stated purpose was celebrating new beginnings, but everyone knew what it really was. A coronation for Sienna, a public parade of his trophy girlfriend, proving to the world that he'd upgraded. I received my invitation the same way everyone else did, through the mail, like I was just another guest, instead of the woman he'd promised forever. My lawyer called immediately. Valencia, don't go. You'll only humiliate yourself. Let him have his party. We'll destroy him in court. But as I sat there, looking at that embossed invitation, an idea started forming. A beautiful, terrible, perfect idea. I reached out to Harrison Chen, Trevor's former business partner from the early days of Tech Vista. Harrison had been there at the beginning, had contributed crucial technology that made our first product viable. Trevor had pushed him out 7 years ago through manipulation and legal maneuvering that I'd facilitated without realizing what Trevor was really doing. Harrison walked away with 15% equity that he'd never sold, despite Trevor's constant pressure. We met at a quiet cafe in Brooklyn, far from Manhattan eyes. "Why should I help you?" Harrison asked, stirring his coffee with the kind of bitterness that 7 years hadn't softened. "You helped him steal my company." "Because he stole from both of us," I said, "and because I can prove he's been committing fraud. With your 15% and my resources, we can take back what he corrupted." I showed Harrison everything I'd found. The cooked books, the hidden assets, the misappropriation of funds. I also showed him something else. Over the years, I'd maintained separate investments Trevor knew nothing about. Stock options from my own legal work, investments in other companies, carefully protected assets in my name alone. I'd been preparing for a future I didn't know I'd need. And I'd been quietly reaching out to other board members who were tired of Trevor's ego, his reckless spending, his treating the company like his personal piggy bank. The math was simple and beautiful. Harrison's 15%, plus my holdings, plus the 3 board members I'd convinced to side with us, equaled 51%. Controlling interest. The board was scheduled to meet the afternoon of Trevor's divorce party. The timing wasn't coincidental. I'd orchestrated every minute of it. The night before the party, I stood in my apartment, surrounded by legal documents and corporate bylaws, and I asked myself the hard question: was this revenge or justice? Was I doing this because he broke my heart or because he tried to erase my legacy? My mother called, the only person who'd stood by me through everything, and I told her my plan. "Baby," she said, her voice steady and sure, "take back what you built. Not for revenge. For every woman who's ever been told she's too much, show them what too much really looks like." I wore red to the divorce party. Not black like a funeral, not white like a surrender. Red like power, like blood, like revolution. I walked into Cipriani, alone, my head high, every eye in that room turning to stare. Trevor's face went pale when he saw me. He'd expected me to hide in shame, to nurse my wounds in private while he celebrated publicly. Sienna was draped on his arm like expensive jewelry, younger and beautiful and smug, wearing a dress that probably cost more than most people's cars. The whispers started immediately. "Can you believe she actually came? This is so awkward. Poor thing, she just can't let go." I smiled at every person who'd abandoned me, greeted every fair-weather friend who'd chosen Trevor's money over loyalty, and took my seat at a table in full view of the whole room. Trevor gave a speech. He actually stood up in front of everyone and thanked me for being so understanding about the divorce. He praised Sienna as the love of his life, his soulmate, the woman who made him feel truly alive for the first time. He talked about new beginnings and following your heart and living authentically. People applauded, Sienna beamed, and I sat there, sipping champagne, waiting for my moment. When Trevor finished, I stood up. The room went silent. Trevor's smile faltered, but he couldn't refuse when I asked to say a few words without looking like a complete monster. I walked to the front of the room in my red dress, and I began. "Thank you all for coming tonight," I said, my voice warm and gracious. "I want to thank Trevor for teaching me so much over the years, about business, about resilience, and especially about knowing your worth." The room relaxed a little. They thought I was going to be dignified in defeat. "Trevor taught me that in business, you have to protect your assets, you have to know when to cut your losses, and you have to strike at exactly the right moment." I pulled a folder from my clutch and placed it on the podium. "Speaking of business, I have an announcement. At 3 o'clock this afternoon, the Tech Vista Solutions Board of Directors held an emergency meeting. It was legal, properly noticed, and fully documented. As of 5 p.m. today, I am the majority shareholder and acting CEO of Tech Vista Solutions. Trevor's champagne glass shattered on the floor. I had the projector turned on, the one I'd arranged to have set up earlier, under the guise of showing a tribute video. Instead, financial records appeared on the screen, evidence of Trevor's fraud, proof that he'd used company funds for personal expenses, including the very jewelry Sienna was wearing around her neck. Documentation of breach of fiduciary duty that would make any prosecutor salivate. Harrison Chen stood up from his table, walking to join me at the front. 15% equity, he said to the room. Never sold, always valid. Valencia and I, along with other board members, now control 51% of the company. Trevor's tenure as CEO is terminated effective immediately. The room erupted. Trevor lunged forward, his face purple with rage, screaming about lawsuits and fraud and theft. You can't do this. This is my company. I built this. No, Trevor, I said, my voice cutting through his tantrum like a knife. We built this, and when you tried to destroy it, I saved it. Your lawyers can talk to my lawyers. Oh, wait, I have better ones. I wrote most of the contracts you'll be trying to fight. Security guards that I had hired appeared at the doors. I'd thought of everything. Trevor was escorted from his own party while everyone watched. His divorce celebration became his corporate funeral. And Sienna, I watched her face change as she realized the man she'd been dating just lost everything that made him interesting. She was checking her phone before Trevor even left the building. But here's the twist nobody saw coming, not even me. 3 days after the party, Sienna called me, not Trevor, me. We met at a cafe, and she sat across from me looking nothing like the airhead model I'd imagined. I need to tell you something, she said. Trevor didn't just find me randomly. I was hired. My blood ran cold. What? 8 months ago, a woman named Clarissa Whitmore contacted me through my agent. She's Trevor's mother. She paid me $200,000 to seduce Trevor, to be photographed with him, to break up your marriage. She told me you were making her son weak, that he needed a wake-up call to remember he was a Whitmore. She wanted him divorced from you before you could claim any more of her son's empire. Trevor's mother, the woman who'd smiled at our wedding while thinking I wasn't good enough for her precious boy, who'd made subtle comments about grandchildren and appropriate wives for 15 years. She'd orchestrated the whole thing. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Sienna smiled sadly. Because she refused to pay me the other half when Trevor lost the company. And because you deserved better than what both of them did to you. I kept all the emails, all the wire transfers, all the evidence. It's yours if you want it. I took the evidence. I didn't sue Trevor's mother, though I could have. Instead, I sent her every single document, every photo, every email proving what she'd done. I included one note. Your son lost his empire because you taught him to underestimate the woman who built it. That's on you. 3 months later, Tech Vista's stock rose 40% under my leadership. I restructured the company, brought in new talent, implemented the innovations Trevor had been too arrogant to consider. Harrison became my COO, a real partnership built on mutual respect. Trevor's lawsuits were all dismissed. He got exactly the settlement he'd planned to give me, minimal and humiliating. Today, Trevor works as a consultant for mid-tier firms, bitter and diminished. Sienna is engaged to another billionaire, proving she was exactly the gold digger I thought she was, just not in the way I imagined. And I'm on the cover of Forbes with the headline, "The Woman Who Took Back Her Empire." People ask me if I regret marrying Trevor. I don't. He taught me the most valuable lesson I've ever learned. Never let anyone make you feel small for being powerful. He wanted a woman who would shrink so he could feel bigger. Instead, he created a woman who learned to rise. So that's how my divorce party became my coronation. Trevor wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone we knew. But instead, he handed me the keys to the kingdom he'd been too arrogant to protect. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button right now and drop a comment telling me what you would have done in Valencia's position. Would you have gone to that party? Would you have taken the company? Let me know below, because I love hearing your thoughts. And if you believe that karma is real and the universe balances the scales, subscribe to this channel, because I've got more stories where the underestimated become unstoppable, where the people who were counted out come back and take everything. Remember this: they can break your heart, but they can't break your empire. Not if you built it yourself. Not if you know your worth. I'll see you in the next one. Stay powerful.